Hey, Juju Bae to everybody else. Welcome to Sanctified. We're so happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank y'all for opening the space for me.
Yes, thank you for being present. And in your testimony, thank you for being so honest and so open. I know it's really going to resonate deeply with people who have stood at a crossroads and were like, all right, which way we going? Then let's just chart the new path. So for people who aren't familiar with you, how do you describe what you do?
What I do, simply I talk to dead people.
Okay.
If that was just one, sentence that's kind of shocked people, I talk to dead folks. But really what it is that I offer alternative ways to engage with spirit that maybe we didn't learn, but you feel connected to in some way. And reminding folks that we come from a long lineage of different spiritual traditions and practices that still matter today, that are still relevant, and that people still practice. And so there's so many options spiritually that people have. And so I'm kind of reminded, particularly Black people, like, we have all these things.
Yeah.
Just so you know, we got all these things, y'all. I'm just telling y'all, offering it and letting people decide what they want to do with it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Were you nervous when you started feeling this pulling and started to come into sort of recognizing what it was? Were you nervous at all?
Oh, I was terrified. Yes. I was terrified. I was already gifted. I knew I had the gift. I knew I had certain kinds of dreams. But I think when I felt the pull to be public about it and share that information, and knowing that my family may find out, and, I'll have to kind of explain myself when people ask me, well, what do you do? Like, what you doing over there? How you make money? So, yeah, I think that was terrifying. But I was more afraid to not do it than I was to do it. And so that's how I knew I had to move forward and open myself up.
Wow.
You're using words like spirit. That might be new to some of our listeners. Like earlier, I was telling DJ that Jesus is a part of like the spiritual tribe. So there's like God and Jesus and ancestors and. So do you identify as spiritual, religious? How does that work for you?
I identify as spiritual and religious. I think that I have multiple religions. I have multiple beliefs and multiple systems that I pull from that make sense to me. So that's my spirituality, but I also follow particular religions and what they may require or ask of me. So in that way, I would say I'm not just pulling things out of the air and being like, okay, I'm spiritual. Like, no, I follow traditions. I follow traditions that are very old, but I just may pull from different ones. So I would say I'm both.
Yeah. I identify as multi-faith. I think faith is what we believe. I think spirituality is how we express what we believe, and religion is a framework or a system, if you will.
Yeah.
So one of the frameworks you had was growing up Catholic, and your grandmother is part of the Holiness Pentecostal tradition. Come on, holiness is still right. So what part of these religions have you kept, if any, and how do they serve you in your life and the work you do?
I think that I've kept a little piece of all of the traditions and religions that I've had and even grew up in. Growing up Catholic, there's a lot of ceremony. There's a lot of ritual. It's lighting candles. It's praying. It's
The saints.
It's the saints, like
the
that.
cherub.
Right. I grew up praying to a particular saint so I could find things. So I know what it's like to go to other spirits or deities that are outside of Jesus and God. Like, let me call St. Anthony because I lost my keys and then I found my keys.
Oh, wow.
So those things are very similar to how I have different deities now within African traditional religions. I can call on a deity for a certain thing to help me. So that is something that I think Catholicism honestly groomed me in that particular way. And when it comes to holiness and even growing up being Baptist as well at one point, I've been a lot of different things. I think the emotive way that Black people express themselves in the church is something that is very old. It is very Black. It's very ancient. Something that is very expressive and powerful, and that movement of spirit through your body. That is not, Christianity didn't create that. That been existed. So I think seeing that as well in church, not in the Catholic Church. No, we was real quiet and saintly. But in those other spaces, I held on to that emotive way to express myself and allow spirit to move through my body.
So how would you describe your relationship with your ancestors? Like what What does that sound like to you when they speak to you? And how does that feel?
So I have one of my gifts is claircognizance. So it's really just this intuitive knowing. So just the knowing, the gut, people may call it, or your intuition. But my ancestors speak to me through that knowing. They have ideas pop into my head that I know aren't mine, but that I accept. And our relationship is like, they're my friends. They're my family. They are literally my family. I have a team of people around me who love me, who I can look in the mirror and see their faces from their features, how I talk, what I do. I know it's because of a whole bunch of dead people, because I am who I am because of them. So, yeah, it feels like I have a strong team that is ready and willing to make things shake for me at any point. And I've seen how they've impacted my life in such an amazing way. And so it's just wonderful to have like family that I didn't know, but I know now. And that knowing that the relationship to someone that you may have lost doesn't have to change, or it doesn't have to go anywhere. It may shift, but I can still talk to my grandfather.
Still access it.
And I do.
I'm so glad that you said you're claircognizant, because I identify as clairaudient. So the clairs are like the colonized way of talking about our spiritual gifts. So for those of you who like smell something, you like, why I smell white diamonds? Nana passed in 97, but that was her, that's her. Or like, you vegan, you raw vegan, only sprouts and oats and bean sprouts, and all of a sudden you have a craving for some fried catfish. Like those, your senses being activated in that way is a divine connection. And so it's God, maybe it's ancestors. I don't know. Juju, tell us, what is the differentiation between God and the ancestors for you?
I say all the time to people, the ancestors are not God. They are not God. They are one facet of the spiritual realm, which is vast. And it's one way that I connect to God, essentially. One way that I connect to that universal power or creator, whatever you want to call it. It is through my people. It's almost like, I think maybe in Christianity, when it's like Jesus is sort of who you go to connect to God, like Jesus is the one that speaks for you more or less. It's kind of like your ancestors in my tradition. I would go to them. They stand up for me in the spiritual realm. They speak on my behalf. They claim me. Like, whose person is that doing that in the world? My pop is like, oh, that's my baby. And she doing this, and we want this to happen. And so we're going to do this work to make sure it happens. So that's kind of how it works. It is not God, though. I have a relationship to God as well, but I connect to God deeply through my people and through my ancestors, because God is in all of us, and it was in them too.
So one of the things that I loved in your testimony was how your grandmother called you without you even saying anything, and just knew, I know what you're into and it's good. When you became a healer, what was that process, and did your grandmother have anything to do with how you learned, or did she spark anything to continue to help push you forward?
That's a good question. Before she knew, or after she knew?
I would think after she knew, but I
Sure.
don't know.
Okay, I don't think so. I think my grandmother calling me and saying, I saw you in a dream 3 times, and on the third time, the Holy Spirit told me that I had to tell you that I see what you're doing, and it's not demonic and it's good. I think that was the help. That was what I needed. I didn't need anybody else's affirmation. No company, no organization, no other person. My grandmother saying she saw me fully was all I needed to know, that I'm in alignment with my destiny. If Ella Steen sees me, I'm good. So that was the help. That was the support. That's all I needed from her. After that, we haven't really talked about it, to be honest. It's kind of was like, I told you this. You know what it is. All right, when I'm going to see you again? Like, come visit me.
I love that. You bring up, DJ, this intergenerational healing that happens. And that's one of the most beautiful parts of my ancestral veneration journey, is that I was able to create a bond with my maternal grandmother that I've never met. But beyond that, learning that there are beings in the ancestral realm who never materialized on earth was helpful for me. And this is a content warning for pregnancy loss. that I was able to connect with the soul that returned back to the ancestral realm through ancestral veneration.
Yeah.
And I remember communing with the spirit, and the spirit was like, "Don't cry, mommy, it's okay." And so understand that this connection is not just about the people who lived on earth and died, but those who never made it through the passage. And so that's been a very healing balm for me. And I bring that up because I never would have had that moment of healing if it weren't for Juju Bae's ministry. I don't think she would use that word,
Wow.
but you know, as a healer, Juju, you see your work when people tell you that their lives are changed. But what did your process look like of becoming a healer? It's obvious you're so effective. How did you learn? Who did you learn from?
I learned from life, I think. You know, I mean, of course, there's different classes. You know, I'm certified in Reiki, which is a form of energy healing that I had to, you know, go to those classes and everything. But generally, I think I learned how to be a healer because in a lot of ways, I felt so unhealed by life. Like I have a lot of trauma. I've experienced a lot of trauma, like many of us. And I think what I needed in those moments was who I try to be. I try to embody that when I needed love in moments I didn't get love, or safety, or someone to believe me, or someone to support me. And so I just took my life lessons and applied them, and that's kind of it. You know, is no cheat code. It's just you know, you live life, and you're like, I do not want this to happen to someone else in this way.
That's heavy. That's heavy. The work that you do is heavy. Yes. Is there any sort of boundary or sort of safeguard that you have in place to kind of keep from spiritual exhaustion?
Yes, I used to be a full-time reader. I used to be a full-time ancestral healer. So people would come to me and they want to connect with their ancestors. They want to know what their ancestors are thinking and feeling. And I would share that information with them full-time. I do that 4 times a week now on 2 days. I do not need to talk to all of these dead people from so many different lineages, particularly Black people, particularly African-American people. We got some spirits that have a lot going on and had a lot of trauma and had a hard life. And they're going to come through and tell you about it and show me and show you. And it was too much for me to see sometimes. So I think I love to heal folks through connecting them with their ancestors, and also heal ancestors, but also have to keep up a boundary with the dead because they will come through in your dreams. They'll start popping up. You start smelling people's stuff. It's somebody else's ancestors. It's not even mine.
Wow.
Someone from a reading. It's a lot. So there's definitely spiritual safeguards and rituals that I have to do to kind of close that portal, that gap that exists. Yes.
Thank you for your service, because niggas be wilding in this realm on earth. Okay, so
and the ancestors, I'm telling you, 100 times
it's
worse.
way more them.
They be wilding.
than us. I can only imagine.
They be wilding.
Y'all know y'all be trying to decline them calls and duck people when you at the mall.
Look.
Child. So this is such rich ground, and I know that this is activating something in many of our listeners. So Juju, what is your advice to Black women who feel called to become healers, or even to communicate with or honor their ancestors, but maybe have felt guilty or ashamed of it? What would you say to them?
My advice to Black women would be, if you feel called to be a healer, you are a healer. You're probably we all have the capacity to heal. We have healed ourselves. We have healed somebody else from a word, a smile, or something, you know, more intentional. So you already are a healer. The second thing I would say is that if you feel the call, just do it in your time and in your pace. You don't have to go and set up an altar and then start calling on names and doing rituals and wearing all white, putting head wraps on. You can, but that's not for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
You probably have already done some form of ancestral veneration. If you've ever been to a funeral, you honored the dead already. If you've ever named your child after someone who passed, you've already done it. You're already doing it.
Right.
So see the work that you do as I am venerating my ancestors. Maybe you could be more intentional about it, or you could name it that, but start there. You don't feel like you have to rush and grab the crystals and buy all the things. That's, I think, where a lot of people mess up. Like, you don't got to do all that.
Yeah, they think
They're
it's
in
one
you.
thing.
Yes.
They think, oh, if I'm this, I have to have all this stuff.
Yep.
And it's got to be all a part. But recognize that you are already working in the gift.
Yes,
You are
you're
already
in it.
doing it.
You're in it, and they're a part of you. You don't. Your ancestors are not separate from you, quite literally, like scientifically. You're made up of a bunch of cells of people before you. So love on yourself. Like, how do you tend to your body? That's helping to tend to them. You know, even there's so many things, but really, you don't have to look outside of yourself to connect. That's what I would
That's
say.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
That's why you see my that's my sissy.
I do. I see why. I see why.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
Juju
you for
Bae.
having me.
Ooh, child, I didn't expect
That's
all
beautiful. I know. It's beautiful. And I think what's so lovely is that we don't have to walk around feeling guilt and shame because someone else may not understand the gift that we have.
Yes.
It's not always for them. Nope. People say, or not people, it's in the word, without a vision, people perish. But you have to have the vision.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be plain to everybody else as long as it's plain to you.
that. Yep.
That's
And you
it.
move in that. They'll follow.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out.
And you know, another interesting thing that I've seen in people's journeys is that when they start to talk about ancestor veneration or their spiritual gifts of healing, that it's not always that the other people think it's demonic. It's that you're reminding them of their gifts that they have repressed or turned away from. Because I remember confessing to my mom like a year or two ago. I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm clairaudient. Like, I hear things. She was like, oh, yeah, I used to see stuff all the time when I was little. I was like, what?
They always be saying stuff like
Wow.
that.
Why have we never talked about this before? So
Yeah,
it's
because it's you're made to feel shameful or
Right.
feel like that's not of God. So
Right.
keep that to yourself. Pray on it.
oh, Jesus.
You know. But I really, as I told the listeners earlier, and I was telling Lyvonne, this is something new. I am sitting here as a student learning and understanding, and I'm really in awe of you and how you do what you do without a fear of what anybody else may feel. You understand exactly who you are and what your capacity is. And that in and of itself is something amazing to me, because a lot of times Black women don't recognize their capacity. They don't understand the boundaries that they need up. And to hear how well you know what you can take, what you can't take, what you're willing to do, what you won't do, and all of the things that surround your gift with such grace and poise and clarity is I am inspired and in awe of.